All right, fellas. So, just like you two, as we are in the constant pursuit of bettering ourselves, I ended up in a wild situation last week where I was sitting in an auditorium and I said to myself, what am I doing here? So, I told you guys a little bit about it, but it was the Coaches Site Live conference. And so the Coaches Site is a super popular hockey kind of drills, tactical playbook type of website. So almost every hockey coach I know at Liberty is on there once a week, just trying to like steal stuff and think of it like Simply Faster, but for like hockey only and on ice. And so I'm sitting there and I'm going like, man, what am I doing here? I am the weight room guy. So I felt super out of place, kind of, imposter syndrome. But yeah, guys, it was an unreal conference. I got to go up with five of our coaches in total at Liberty. So kind of represented a lot of our hockey teams. And then, yeah, it was an unreal event. So it was kind of funny. The very first speaker at the conference kind of put me at ease. It was Sean Bormett, who is actually the Michigan wrestling coach. So the conference was in Ann Arbor at the University of Michigan. And so to have him like kick things off and lead it, I was like, all right, that makes me feel a little bit better. And then his quote was, in order to win, we must be fiercely competitive to learn what you need to know. And then I was like, all right, that's why I'm there. All right, so I'm the weight room guy, but anytime you could be around these high level coaches, it's just unreal. And they're there for a reason. So we just got to kind of take it and kind of run with it. But I guess like a question to you guys is, have you attended anything, or what other kind of areas in your life do you sort of take away from outside of the sports performance world?
Oh man, I was a hockey guy. And I
Yeah.
haven't been to any hockey conferences. Always wanted to go to one, but just from playing and being around coaches all the time, you just try and be a sponge.
Yeah.
Especially, the better. It's not always the better performing team, but when you see those teams where you can just tell it's a well coached machine. We've been outcoached, in my hockey career many times, and you can just see what the coach is doing, and you kind of see like, oh man, that'd be nice too. But yeah, Ross, you got anything?
I mean, other than from coaching multiple sports at the high school level and being able to, see the stuff that we do in a weight room and see it on the field. I mean, when you're pulling stuff away from the different books you're reading, whether it's leadership books, nutrition books, all that kind of stuff, I mean, you got to pull away from a bunch of different topics that are, at the end of the day, they are going to help you be a better coach. But man, I can only imagine when you're going to a conference like that with all the hockey coaches, the professional guys, college guys, and whoever else, when if you work with a ton of hockey, especially as the weight room guy, and being able to hear those different coaches talk, and I think, and Chris, you can obviously elaborate on it. I think it'd be interesting to hear how the different coaches looked at the weight room or looked at the training and what they kind of valued and what they push their coaches to do. Because as we know, different sport coaches want different things from their strength coach versus maybe what we want. It might be a little different, but be curious if that was something you ran into up there.
Yeah, it's a great point. It was kind of affirming where you have a lot of sports performance, strength conditioning guys with differing opinions and thoughts and things that they value. And I mean, with the coaches that were there, it was spanning all the levels. So there were multiple NHL teams represented, Coyotes, the Knights, the Senators, the Kraken, a former NHL guy was there. I don't know if he was a big deal or not, named Mike Babcock. I think I'm saying that correctly. Just kidding. Yeah, I know he was
Pretty big deal.
he was a big dog. The Rangers, the Red Wings, they also had a ton of European coaches from Germany, Sweden, and lots of colleges represented. Michigan, obviously, Vermont, Princeton, Ryerson. Tons of AAA and junior organizations, and then some private sector guys. And so to your question there, Ross, how some strength coaches are the Olympic lift guys, some are not. It was interesting that some of the coaches were long distance running guys, and then some were not. And I just thought it was affirming to know that even at some of the highest levels and these teams that, on paper, everybody looks up to, and even, they want to watch them on TV, that to me, it really has to come down to the head coach and the players that get recruited. Like, there's a lot of ways to get there, and there's a lot of different training methods. And as long as the head coach is leading the team well and you have the right group of athletes, you're going to find success. That was kind of one of the takeaways. So, for example, earlier on in the conference, it was 3 days, tons of speakers, and one of the first speakers was like, you have to make it hard. Why does everybody want to be a Navy SEAL? Because it has this allure around it of being hard. It's difficult. It's like, so you need to make your practices, you need to make your team have challenges and make it difficult. And he showed videos of like military style training. And for me, I'm just like, ugh, no, like that's the opposite of what I want. And then another coach was saying how, our team's going to run a 5K every single week, where we're going to test the beep test every week, once a month, something like that. And again, for me, with a sprint-based focus and emphasis, again, it's just like, ugh, no. But then there were also some coaches that were kind of on my level or my path, speed first, sprint based. So yeah, it was wild. It was wild to see how at the highest levels, they still have those differing opinions, just like, you guys and I do with whether it's to squat bilateral or to squat unilateral. I thought that was really interesting.
Chris, do you think, I guess this is kind of a two-parter, but do you think that, one, the long distance kind of guys were more of the old school type coaches, the older guys? Was that something you noticed?
It was a perfect even split, actually. And I thought I would hear it more from the European coaches. And I got to talk to Cam Abbott with, I can't say his team's name, I'm going to call it Rogel BK. They're in the Swedish Hockey League. They just won the championship. And I got to talk a little bit of training with him. And he's a North American, so he actually said how he tries to get his guys away from the long distance stuff, which I was like, okay, awesome. But one of our kind of like oldest coaches was all about the long distance, or at least the hard. And then one of the younger kind of upstarting coaches at the college level was also about it. So I wonder more if it's just who you've been around and who you've been influenced by, right? Like if we did an internship for a coach who's all about the Olympic lifts, most likely we're going to have an Olympic lift dominant type of program.
Yeah.
If we intern or work with a guy who's sprint based, we'll probably have that. So yeah, it was kind of a split almost, Blair.
Yeah, I always ran into, guys I played with, or played against, guys I knew, like somewhere in the weight room, bodybuilding, whatever. Mm-hmm. Some were just out running all summer, long distance. And, obviously sprinkling a little bit of that in there isn't such a bad thing, but, mm-hmm. I'm on the same page where, speed kills, and the ability that repeatability of sprinting is going to be, mm-hmm. Dominant. But yeah, it's always interesting. The long distance running is kind of a head scratcher, I think, for me.
Yeah. And I mean, you had a few coaches kind of talk about it. So it's just interesting. I really just think it kind of comes down to, you have to have a solid head coach who can inspire the athletes and you have to have the right group of athletes to be successful, right? That's no surprise and it's no shocker, but I think really that's kind of what it comes down to. How much of an impact do we really make off the ice, off the court, off the field? I think we definitely contribute to the culture of the team. We could help foster that. We could also destroy it, but yeah, you gotta align yourself with a good coach, and you'll be fine.
One thing I remember from watching training videos of Europeans, and maybe it's just central to Russia or Sweden or somewhere, but I remember always seeing them doing so many jumps.
Yeah,
just jump after jump after jump, and I was thinking, like, man, that's a lot of jumping.
But especially with hockey players with just bad ankles, bad feet, bad knees, bad hips, right? It's a lot of extra kind of wear and tear. But yeah, it's there's more than one way to get to your destination, I guess, and different things work for different teams and different coaches at different times. And it was interesting. A lot of the coaches, right? Again, the coaches at the highest levels really kind of just harped in on that, like, buy-in, making sure that your entire team is kind of united on something. And they touched on, like, reverse engineering. So start with the end goal in mind and then break it into tiny parts and have your, like, team or have your captains be influential in kind of making the decisions for how to go. So one of the speakers' name was John Bacon. He's an author, and he published a book called Let Them Lead. And basically was like, hey, make sure you're involving your team in all of these decisions. Like, your players aren't dumb. They'll be able to kind of figure it out. And when that team kind of has that buy-in, I think that makes a huge difference as well.
Yeah, I can remember our coaches having captains meetings, and kind of sharing that responsibility with the captains. I don't remember a lot of times where, it was kind of like a, democracy where the whole team is together making a decision. But I can always remember coaches sitting down with captains, sometimes being part of those. And, I think there's a ton of value in that as far as, like, getting buy-in.
Yeah.
Obviously it helps too when the captains of the team are well respected and guys want to listen to them.
So I think for all of us, we've been, correct me if I'm wrong, while we were all at Liberty, we've been a part of a team that's either won a national championship or at least made it to the final game of the year, right? Whether we were on the team, in your case, Blair, or coaching in the weight room for you and I, Ross. Ross and Blair, what were some of the big kind of takeaways from that team or that coaching staff that you could remember? I'm interested to see if what you guys think or say kind of lines up with some of the things I was hearing from the coaches at the conference.
Ross, you want to go first?
Sure. I'll kind of circle around because I was going to ask you a question, Blair, with hockey and the captains, but I'll circle back to it. I know at least with Liberty and, say, like, working with wrestling and a couple of the other teams, any of those really high level teams, at least the ones that were finishing at the end and that were winning in the end, I always felt had a really strong leadership component from within the team, whether it was guys holding people accountable, girls holding everyone accountable. There was some sort of focal point as far as there was a couple guys that could maneuver and lead that team. And then on top of that, their coaching staff, whether it was their head coach or their assistants, they were strong leaders and they were respected, but they were also coaching at a high level and running things in a super, super smart way. And with those coaches in particular, I thought they always did a really good job of letting the people that are experts in what they do what they do best, and listening to them and taking the advice that, hey, this is what I think for this. Not saying you don't have to do that, follow that direction every single time, but when I've got people that know more about a certain topic than me, I want to hear their ideas and how they can blend into our practice plan or different things like that. But yeah, Chris, I think to answer that question, it would just be the captains and the leadership. And then Blair, I would ask you, because I actually had this conversation with our football coach this week of whether or not, obviously this is high school, so it's all relative, and I think college is a little different, of whether or not a coach should pick captains or players are voting for captains. Now, I think in high school, you typically get kind of a popularity contest of most popular kid on the team is going to be chosen as a captain versus maybe who the actual leader is. And I've always, just from watching hockey and not being a hockey expert, there's seems to be this massive respect and whatnot for your captains and your assistant captains and all that stuff. So Blair, with your teams and your experience, one, was it typically a player appointed thing? Was it typically a coach appointed thing? And then through your experiences, why do you think within hockey, if you agree with me, why do you think within hockey there's such a respect for that?
Well, within hockey, I think, especially having, one captain and then maybe a couple of alternates, you have usually a guy who's really earned it. It's not usually a popularity thing. Some coaches will choose to have the team vote. A lot of coaches will pick their captain because they want someone who exemplifies that leadership that they want. But I think that it's almost always an earned role. It's not always the guy who's got the most goals, the most assists. But it's someone who, shift in and out, is going to lead the team and, sacrifice their body, whatever they got to do. That's usually the case. I don't know. I feel like, it's relative to the sport, but that's what I've seen. A lot of the captains that I played with were just guys wanted to hang around off the ice. They wanted and trusted them to be on the ice when it mattered. And, they didn't make a lot of stupid mistakes. They really played for the team. And I saw that when I lost 2 national championships, one playing and one coaching. But I saw that too when we had success at nationals. So it's one of those things. It's a well-earned role.
And to touch on those teams that you played for and coached, those are some phenomenal leaders that you had at the captain role there. Speaking on captains, it was interesting. And tell me if this is part of hockey culture, Blair. So I'm going to talk about this guy a bunch, John Bacon. His kind of background and story is he wrote the book Let Them Lead, and I think in the year 2000 he took over literally the worst high school hockey team in America. Like, they were ranked like 1,256 out of like 1,256, something like that. So he called it like the Mighty Ducks meet Ted Lasso. Like, he was a terrible high school hockey player. He didn't score a point throughout like his entire career of high school hockey. And now he's going to take over his high school team who like hasn't won a game in 3 years. And they're the worst high school hockey team. And then 3 years later, they competed in the state championship, which is wild. It's a crazy story, but he was telling a story of they just lost the championship, and he walks back into the locker room and everyone's still dressed because apparently, whether it's hockey culture or his team, no one took their pads off until the captain started. So is that a thing, Blair, in hockey culture, or is that just perhaps for that team. Like no one could take their shin pads off or whatever until the captain did.
Not necessarily the captain per se, but I've sat in the locker room for, a good chunk of time after losing a big game with my gear on. It's just like, I don't know. I can remember it for as long as I've been playing hockey that, there was always guys who would just leave it on as long as they could. I remember playing junior hockey, and we lost a playoff game one year, and one of the vets, who was his last year, 20-year-old, aging out, and he was in his gear for like 2.5 hours. I was, had my gear on for a bit, sitting there, depressed, whatever, and hit the showers, hanging out with the guys in our lounge area and whatever. Come back to the locker room to grab something, and he's still sitting there, shoulder pads up by his ears, just stewing in it. So not necessarily waiting for the captain, although that's a good sign of respect, I think. But I've seen that before for sure.
Okay. Good. Yeah. No, I think we're doing a pretty good job for you and I, Ross, where like obviously I work in hockey, but I don't know hockey. We're recapping a hockey coaches clinic here, and we're rolling. But I wanted to plug this conference real quick, where I was just shocked at how much time these high level coaches gave to me with just like questions, right? I couldn't ask them about their systems. I couldn't ask them really good detailed questions about their presentation, but I was able to ask, again, coaches who are doing it at the highest level in their field or their sport, kind of just like, hey, how do you balance your family life? Hey, what is your best thing? How do you get trust from your players? How do you create your culture? And these guys would sit there for 20, 30 minutes and talk to me, and I was just shocked. So we've all been to a conference where we've all been to an NSCA or CSCCA or something like that, where you just don't have time to talk to these speakers. There's so many people. So I really want to start to plug these smaller, so to speak, conferences like a TFC, a Track Football Consortium, or even CVAS. And Ross, you said you had an awesome time down at the clinic, and you're going to the high school strength conditioning coaches national conference soon, I think, right?
Thursday, baby.
So yeah, I was just kind of blown away at like, oh, perfect. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I was just blown away at like, you're the big dog in this room, and I'm nobody. I don't even coach your sport, and here we are talking. So that was pretty cool. But starting to kind of get into the more of the nitty gritty, so to speak, of some of my takeaways. It's been talked about a lot, but I think now in hockey, it's just getting hit over the head of your practices have to be made up of stuff that looks like the game. So Blair, I think kind of like gone are the days of drills, right? The 4 blue classic drill where you pass it here, you pass it there, and you come down with no pressure and just take a open shot on the goalie. I guess those are still kind of around in warm-ups, but yeah, drills are kind of dying out, it seems. Every single coach there was talking about small area games. And I think that kind of relates across all sports, not just hockey. Ross, I value your opinions for setting up practice plans and layouts because you've coached sports. So yeah, give me your thoughts there, guys.
It's on you, Blair.
Oh. As far as hockey goes, yeah. I mean, quick example. I can remember spending 30 minutes doing one-on-one, one-on-O's, one-on-ones, two-on-ones, and next thing you know, practice is half over. So I'm glad those days are gone because that was a gigantic waste of time.
Yeah.
And they talk about, hey, you got to have great shots and warm up too. Never happens. So, it's a breath of fresh air to hear that. The most fun I ever had was playing small ice games because, you know, it was still getting tons of shots, but it's more game, you know, realistic. And I can remember some of the best practice coaches I had where, you know, we had a few of those drills to start practice, but then, you know, we're doing, you know, what we called battle drills on Wednesdays where the nets are moved close together.
Yes.
We've got a rope closing everything in. So the pucks, you know, we're not losing as many pucks, but, you know, then it's like, you know, 3-on-3, 2-on-2, 1-on-1, guys battling it out. And, you know, you're fighting for the puck in a close area. And it's hard for the goalies. Was my position where we have to react quickly. Like that is way more realistic. We got way more out of that than we ever did any of the other drills where it was just skate down the ice, shoot the puck.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you, Ross?
Well, I was going to say I've always found it wild from coaching lacrosse, which is kind of like hockey, but obviously not at the same time, but similar concepts. But just from the fact of, like Blair was just saying, whether it's the one guy on the goal or one-on-ones to goal, I mean, the goalie is getting 100 shots in a very short period of time, and it's just getting absolutely dogged. And then meanwhile, the offensive guys might have got, you know, 10 shots and they got a couple minutes between shots and they're feeling great and they're loving it. Meanwhile, the goalie is sitting in red for 30 minutes straight and they can't think straight and this and that. And that's a perfect situation of trying to make it like not trying to make it like a game where you should make it like a game where there is a little bit, you're going to have a bit more time to set up and react and think clearly. Because I mean, when you're sitting in the red and you're taking that many shots, you're obviously not going to think that clearly. You're not going to make as many saves. You're not going to make the right decisions. And now we're just making bad calls and making saves. When it comes to the practice layout and all that stuff, I mean, like we all know and like we've talked about, and I think that's the biggest thing we can impact when it comes to coaches is obviously we're starting with the warm up and you're starting with skill development and your speed work at the beginning. And then, from there, like you guys have both said, I mean, we're doing small sided games and what have you. I know for us and when I was coaching lacrosse and coaching wrestling, the two biggest things we did, I'll speak for lacrosse, is we started, the first 15 minutes were just speed work basically. And whether it was, say, shots on goal or what have you, but it was full speed sets, but there may not have been a goalie in the goal. I mean, it was all skill work and fast paced stuff. And then when it came like for wrestling, and wrestling is a different beast, but I've always thought that wrestling coaches naturally prepare and write their practices probably better than any other sport coach, I think, just because of the way that you have to teach the sport and that you're really having to teach this library of moves and situations, because nothing is ever really planned and I got to react all the time. So it's really more of teaching this big library of stuff. And so with wrestling, you're kind of naturally starting with, say, skill acquisition first. Then you're starting with kind of tying some moves together. Then we're going live for short bits. Then we're going full live. Like there's just ways that it builds in, which you can apply the same to hockey or any other sport. But I have always thought that wrestling does an exceptional job of that compared to most sports.
That's a
good point. I'd agree with that. Anything else to add to that, Blair?
Oh, I was just going to say, talking about the battle days and the small area games, Ross brought up a great point that it just clicked and reminded me, full ice drills, I never really got that tired, sometimes, but not usually. And then when we would do the small area games, there'd be a lot of players standing around and I would be dead after 10 or 15 minutes because I was getting shot after shot, and I would be in the red. We didn't have the heart rate monitors at that point, but I could tell you right now I was in the red, and my legs were burning, and I was looking for a sub if I could get one. So, obviously it's not something that you can do all the time. It's something that you have to use and use wisely. And that's why, that would be a Wednesday thing, because then come Friday, game night, I'm rested again. Thursday is a little bit easier. We're doing power play, penalty kill, a little bit more, technical stuff to ease into the weekend. But I thought that was a good point, Ross. And having seen some of wrestling's practices, I would say that they are dialed in, and being able to, and it might not be every wrestling coach, but just the ones we've seen, but being able to go from, specific, parts of the skills and bringing it into that full, movement and the full, I guess, like match wrestling, movements, whatever you want to call it. I'm not the wrestling guru, but going from specific to, actually wrestling is probably a smart way to do it.
Well,
and I think
our volleyball coach at our high school, he's the only guy that has asked me about practice planning and laying out his practices. And he's also a pretty good coach, and he runs a pretty good organization. But I was asking him, and we were just talking about it, and he naturally already lays out his practices in essentially high, medium, low, and goes in blocks of time. Nice. Of, all right, this block is a low period, wow. A low period for 10, 15, 20 minutes. Then we've got a medium intensity period. Then we've got a high intensity period for, 5, 10, whatever, however many minutes it is. But he just cycles through for X number of time, depending on what the drills are. And that was, and I know Chris, I think we had talked about it at one point when I went to one of the high school family days, and the coach was talking about research from the jump. I don't remember what it's called, but it's a little jump thing that goes on your waistband, and it might just be called jump or vert. And the most impactful jump or thing that a volleyball player does is a jump serve. And it's because when they're doing a jump serve, they're throwing the ball up, and then they're looking up at the ball to hit, and then they're landing without looking down, preparing to land. And so they're not absorbing that jump as well as they do versus, all right, I'm going to go spike the ball, and they're kind of prepping to land. So a jump serve is the most impactful thing that a volleyball player does. Well, normally with most coaches, when they are trying to do a low, easy period, they're doing jump serves, or they're just serving because that doesn't seem like a stressful thing or an impactful thing because it's just serves. I'm not digging the ball. I'm not doing a bunch of jumps. I'm just sitting back here and I'm serving. Where if you get a bunch of girls and they just did 30, 40 jump serves, that's super, super stressful. And that was something that I had mentioned to our coach, and he was like, man, that actually makes a lot of sense. And they didn't really do a bunch of that on their high blocks, but he was like, okay, I'll think about it as far as when I'm setting stuff up. But yeah, long story short, he naturally had done that in his planning. So there really wasn't any fixing, but he was trying to figure out a way to get better. I was like, no, man, that's pretty good. I've watched your practices and they look pretty solid. So let's keep trucking.
Yeah, that's pretty high level. And I think as the performance side of things, we could have such a tremendous impact on the practices, talking with the coaches of just saying like, hey, this is perfect. Put this here, put that there, consolidate some of your stressors in this way here, and lay out a great practice. Like I think of what you did at Liberty with Heath and the swim team, Ross. It was beautiful, right? You kind of brought in a track and field sort of perspective to a sport that's typically just yardage and yardage and yardage based, like actually sprinting with sprinters. And yeah, if we could get those relationships with more coaches, I think it'll be beneficial. So at this conference, after a presentation, if they were talking about whether it was a certain skill or a certain small area game, I'd kind of lean over and say, hey, that'd be perfect to implement on this day during this time of your practice, and kind of get the sport coaches thinking more on that, skill acquisition, energy system development type of path that we have in the weight room. Talking small area games a little bit more, I wanted to highlight one of the speakers. So the setup at the coaches site live was really good. A lot of conferences that I've been to, there's multiple speakers going on at the same time, which I don't love because I want to go there. I want to hear everybody if I can. So they had some speakers kind of give almost like a mini TED Talk. It was like 15 minutes or less. Other speakers got 30, 45 minutes, an hour or something like that. I'm not sure how they kind of broke that up, but one of the coaches was Kim Weiss. Hope I'm saying that right. And she coaches for the Maryland Black Bears in the North American Hockey League, which is a tier 2 junior here in America. And I thought her presentation was unreal. So she showed losses that they suffered in overtime. And then she showed the drills that they're going to do to kind of fix that. So apparently there's a stat where, like, if you make 5 good passes in hockey, it leads to a good goal or shot opportunity. And she showed how in overtime it's 3-on-3, and they did have statistics to show that they made those 5 good passes, but they're all in kind of like the outside or the perimeter of where you want to be to take good shots. So then she showed their 2 drills of how they were going to fix that and things they were going to implement to make those changes for next year. And I just thought that was unreal. But more on those small area games, as I was personally watching them, it kind of let me see where we are beneficial. So one of the coaches from the NTDP was showing a small area game to work on creating time and space. And this is something that Keir talks about a lot. I think to have good shot or scoring opportunities, you need time and space. Well, to create that time and space, you need good acceleration. And what are some of the key components to good acceleration? Good feet, good ankles, good shin angles, and good hips. So I think for us as coaches, if we could watch some of those small area games, we could see, or at least understand, coach language and player language better to say, hey, when you need to create that time and space, you need to be able to drop your hips. You need to be able to get your ankle bent here. You'll project further. You'll create more separation. So that was kind of a big one for me, as all these hockey coaches are going through their small area games, drills, or what have you. I would see, like, okay, I can make an impact right there, getting them to the puck a little bit faster. So yeah, just kind of a nugget there for you boys of like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Kind of watch those small area games, see where we could speak the same language as the coaches and the players and get more buy-in for what we're doing.
Yeah, the players definitely have to have the awareness of where to go and everything, but then where we, the value is with us is now that first, second, third step is a little bit quicker. Mm-hmm. I remember when I was a kid, I had a coach say, by your 6th step, you should be at full speed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's on the ice. I don't know what they say for, track or on the field, but that always kind of, I remember that from when I was like 8, but, it always rang true. Like, I mean, I would be in my goalie equipment, 6 steps, I'm full go. And mm-hmm. then talking about the 5 passes, one of the,
please.
When I was younger too, I got called up to play with a team, and they were really good. Like, they were one of the top AAA teams in Ontario for the year older at the time. And I just sat on the bench, but I was in the locker room with them, and the coach, who was really solid, he had he had goals for each period. Obviously, he wanted like 10 shots a period or something like that. But what he wanted at the end of the game was 90 passes. It's the only time in my whole life I had ever
Interesting.
heard a coach have that as a goal, but he wanted 30 passes a period, and like quality passes, not just like a, chip off the boards and somebody skates to it. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but he wanted tape to tape guys making good passes. And at that point, I hadn't seen the team pass as well as this team had. And just having it as a goal, and it wasn't like they were trying to make, stupid tippy tap passes to try and get the number. Like they were dialed in, tic tac toe passes that, were giving them more opportunities. So I just thought that was interesting. The 5 good passes. That's what I thought of.
If you think about it, your offense, your job on offense is I'm trying to obviously create space, but I'm also trying to create chaos. I'm trying to create chaos for defense. Like I'm trying to keep them not knowing what's happening, where defense is trying to close space and control whatever you're trying to do. They're trying to prevent chaos. So if I am passing the ball or doing more ball movement, it's going to be a bit more chaos. They have to react versus controlling everything. And I think I think when you're teaching any sport, particularly younger kids, strictly from an offensive and defensive side, and understanding that that's what essentially the goal is to create space, get room, create some chaos in terms of offense. Defensively, I'm trying to close space, keep it under control, not let them move the ball. And then obviously transition's a whole different ball game. But if you can at least understand that concept, if let's say I'm on offense and I understand that that's what my job is, and then I understand what the defense is trying to do, I can make better decisions in order to make better passes and to hit those marks and whatnot. But I think that's a really interesting thought as far as number of passes, because it makes a ton of sense. And and you can apply that to any other sports, because that's something for wrestling where it's, hey, you're trying to make X number of attempts or shot attempts or this and that and the other in a period. There are different drills you can do where it's like, hey, you got to have this many points or this many shots or what have you in a period of time. And something that I know that I always preached with my team and my kids was just tempo, and it was just pressure, and it was always controlling that, because it's particularly in wrestling, man, if you're not controlling the pace and you're defending, it's bad. It's not good. And you don't want to be reacting, but just keeping pressure, keeping tempo. But yeah, no, I really like that concept.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Blair.
I was just going to say, how about soccer, European football, whatever you want to call it, and the amount of passing to try and create some sort of chaos and move the ball up the field? Like sometimes it's
Great
just
example.
irritating, but yeah, there's a prime example. Go ahead, Chris.
That's a good one. And this presenter, Kim Weiss, she just had so many good statistics. Like Ross, you would have loved it. Just like stats for days that she went out and found on her own between the NAL, USHL, NCAA, and NHL. Just like, hey, these 5 good passes. But kind of moving on now, something that every single coach hammered was you must have competitions, right? From U14 AAA coaches all the way up to your guys in the NHL or Europe who are winning championships. You must have competitions, and you must keep score in practice. And that's something I totally agree with. I've said to some of our coaches before, I don't think it's a novel idea, but I did think it was interesting that almost every single coach at this big time conference said that. So takeaways for you guys, have you applied that or seen that in other sports? Blair, was that a thing for you growing up or playing and coaching in hockey? And Ross, what about you for the sports that you've coached or with coaches that you've worked with?
Yeah, I don't want to shoot myself in the foot here, but in practice, probably some of the practices where I gave the most effort was when we were having a shootout at the end of practice. There's prime time competition, and something you don't see a lot in games, but that was one of the things I had the most fun with, and I wanted to try the hardest. Playing, scrimmages and stuff. It's the most game realistic. Probably when I tried the hardest too. Don't want to lose. With Liberty, when the season was over and we're having fun, we were playing Canada versus USA. Well,
oh yeah,
those were some of our most serious games and playing against each other, and nobody wants to lose that game. We kept track of the score of the game, and we kept track each practice who was up, like a Canada-US series. So,
yeah,
the competition stuff, even if it's just, pointless, it really does make a difference to the level of the ability that, I guess, how hard guys want to try, how motivated they are to put forth their best effort in a practice. And I mean, the harder you're trying, the better you're going to get. So,
yeah. I mean, if you're measuring what matters at the end of the day, and if you care about it, you're gonna measure it, and that can be for us jumping, sprinting, weights, or whatever. It can be in practice. Something that when I was at UVA, they did unbelievably was scoring offense and defense the entire practice, and like it wasn't touchdowns and not touchdowns. I mean, defense was getting points for rushing the passer, for a blocked ball, for an interception. Like they were different things getting different points the entire practice. Offense would have been the same way of, X number of yards, touchdowns, this and that. And the whole entire practice has just kept a score. And practice, it would be like in the 80s and 90s of points. But the point being was, anytime there was a live period, something was getting scored. And if you can, if you can put that into any practice and figuring out a way to create a scoring system that benefits both offense and defense, I think that's going to be the best way to do it. Because again, you measure what matters.
Yeah, I'm trying to. So, Kara Mori, she was the University of Princeton's women's hockey coach, and she was just all about competition, on ice, off ice, wherever, however. And her thing was like, it just develops grit, right? If you're always competing, it just kind of sharpens you like a sword. And so I can't remember if it was from Kara's presentation or another one, but I wrote out somewhere, have competition in the weight room, right? So split the team in two. Hey, whichever team has the most PRs on their broad jump today is going to win whatever. Hey, whoever jumps the highest or gets the closest to their PR today, whoever, a team of 4, whoever runs the fastest today wins whatever. So yeah, it just really got me thinking of like, okay, athletes are so motivated by competition. They want to compete. Athletes do not like to lose. So what are ways where I could bring that sort of competition level into the weight room, elevate the intensity, and just make it more fun, make it more special? So yeah, that I forget which speaker really got me on that. It may have been Kara Mori from Princeton.
Well, I can tell you when I started letting kids write each other's sprints down, that was game over. Like, one, it keeps a bit of honesty, obviously. Yeah. 2, when we're doing the sprints, you'll have 3 or 4 kids will be at the iPad when one kid's going, and obviously they're going to see what they ran before. They're going to see their PRs and trying to hit different numbers. But that competitiveness, like I had an athlete today who was just distraught at the fact that another athlete was running faster than them.
Oh yeah.
Distraught and trying to explain the situation.
How dare you?
They had never, literally, we had never even done it before. And it was like, it doesn't matter what your times are. And
Mhm.
and this particular athlete is very fast, and they've proven to be fast at longer distances. We were just doing 0 to 10 today, and
Okay.
so those first couple steps, like if you're great at it, you're going to be a little bit faster. And it was interesting as a sidebar that the fastest athletes were not, like in a typical longer sprint, were not the fastest in the 0 to 10, at least today,
Mhm.
at least today. And so making that point, but nevertheless, the competitiveness there, just when they're looking at the sprints or even in the jump mat, the same idea. Like if in a perfect world, I would have a TV going and I would somehow be able to have either a leaderboard or something actively with every single kid on the leaderboard on
Yeah.
the TV, just constantly moving. And I don't even know if that's possible, but it would be awesome if it was. But being able to do that would be huge.
I remember just doing the last like 3 minutes of my workouts at Liberty. I did head, shoulders, knees, and toes
Yes.
a handful of times. And it was, it's just a goofy thing, but, it gives a little bit of competition in the weight room. And man, I remember with the swim guys, like I think there was kids who were there for the workout who just wanted to be there for head, shoulders, knees, and toes.
So funny.
But I mean, something as simple as a little competition like that, it creates some more buy-in for the weight room. Guys have fun with it, and they leave the weight room having had a better experience, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'll take some planning and organization on my part, which is definitely not my strong suit. But yeah, trying to find ways to inject a little bit of competition in there, that could be pretty fun. And it could just be like hey, you win $10 of Flames cash, like type of prize, right? But people are going to battle for it. And just a quick side note, when you're talking there, Ross, on the 0 to 10 being slower for some of your faster people, 1080 has an update that you could run a force velocity profile on your athletes now, just like there on the machine and with the tablet attached. So that's pretty exciting. I don't have to go into Excel sheets and plug in all these crazy formulas. So
Must be nice.
Some information to follow on that. Yeah, no, it's great. I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty awesome.
Chris,
so another big go ahead.
For this conference here, because
Yes.
I've been to enough conferences and things with you that I just let you ask questions because you're going to ask enough questions to get to whatever I'm probably curious about too. And it's probably said in a much more eloquent way than what I'm going to say. What did you get a chance to ask people really good questions? 2, what were the main questions from the other hockey coaches to each other that were not like an X and O's related type of thing?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So that's what I like about certain conferences where the presenter says something, I can raise my hand and just get the answer right then and there. So there were a bunch of times where I wanted to do that, but this was not the venue, and it was not the kind of setup to be asking questions in the middle of it, because every presenter was like on a tight clock. Like if you went up there with the 15-minute time slot, they like shot at you like, you have 3 minutes left. Stay on the carpet. Like you got to keep going here. Don't veer off. So I didn't get to ask a lot of questions during it, but there were kind of like in the hallway or social times. And I didn't want to ask the head hockey coach a bunch of off ice type of questions. So my main ones that I wanted to know was, what makes you special? What makes you different? So I was asking every coach, what's your thing? Right? So for Bill Belichick, you could say it's defense, right? He's always been able to throw a great defensive scheme together. For Phil Jackson, you could say it's the triangle offense, right? For other coaches, they have their thing. And what's crazy is a lot of coaches said their thing was film. Like they were amazing at watching, cutting film, and breaking things down. Oh, one coach specifically said, if I have 12 periods of film to watch on a team, they will not beat me. And I was like, oh, all right, that's pretty good. And another good one was establishing relationships with your team. So a lot of coaches were kind of giving me their opinions on how they do that. Simple things like, hey, how's your family? How's your wife? How's your kids? Or, hey, how's school going? How's that teacher? And trying to get touch points with each and every athlete. And then your second question, it was all kind of like hockey talk.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll just use our Liberty coaches for an example. So we had 4 of our Liberty coaches there, Liberty hockey coaches. And after a presentation, a lot of them would be like, okay, how are you going to implement that next year? Or what was your takeaway from that you're going to modify something with or for? And so that a lot of that was kind of like coach talk, which a little bit was over my head, and a little bit I was just like, all right, I don't really care, so to speak. But yeah, that I'll just kind of leave it there for what our Liberty coaches were talking about. But they would kind of just ask each other, what'd you think? How are you going to do that? Did you like it? Did you not? But for the most part, everything was positive, right? Like when you have I want to call him the like penalty kill coach for the Vegas Golden Knights up there, you're going to go like, oh, that was really good. It just kind of is what it is.
Was there anything that...
Who was the penalty kill? Sorry, Ross.
You're good.
You go ahead.
I was just going to say, if there was anything that really blew your mind, or blew their mind, I should say, like I know when I go to a conference, I guarantee there's at least like one thing that I'm like, all right, like first time I heard Dan Fichter talk, I'm like, okay, this is a little much.
Yeah. This is different. Yeah. So what I think blew their mind a lot was some of the skill-based drills and then how to implement them during a practice. And even for me, I was like, dang, man, these guys are unreal. So hockey, I don't know if this is across all sports, is kind of a wild one to me, where you have your head coach who's like the technical, tactical-ish type of guy. And then you have your power skating coach, because skating is so important. And then you have your skill coach, because passing, shooting, stick handling is so important. And so you kind of have not necessarily silos, but you have different kind of like areas of expertise. And so some of the skill coaches that were presenting, half the conference was in an auditorium. The other half was in an ice rink where guys are on the ice, mic'd up, and kind of explaining a drill with some players out there. Some of the skills that they had them doing and the equipment they had out there, a lot of our Liberty coaches were like, hot dang, we're buying that, we're implementing that. And an area where I was like pumping my chest was, I've been saying for years, split the ice into, you have your blue line and in, let's just call that the offensive zone. You have your, blue lines area, your neutral zone, and then you have your blue line and in defensive zone. So split the ice into thirds. Most teams have 3 coaches. Have your coach down here working on this particular skill, your coach here on this skill, and your coach down here working on a different one. And finally, like, they got to see it in action. I believe the gentleman was with Slip Skill Tech or Slip Skill Hockey, and he's a skill-based coach. And he just had these like phenomenal passing drills. And he's like, here's what you're going to do in this section. Here's what you'll do in the neutral zone. And you'll do this drill down here in the offensive or defensive, whatever you want to call it, zone. And so that to them was like, holy, that is good stuff. And for me, it was kind of like, finally, yes, let's do this. Come on. Because in 21 minutes, you could have 3 7-minute stations where if you split your team into thirds, it'll be 8 guys per station, and that's just like tons and tons and tons of reps. And your middle part could be stick handling and passing. Your other parts can involve a shot. So that was a huge takeaway for the coaches there.
That's funny because that's like how every hockey camp ever is run.
Yeah.
And it works. You know, you can get so much done in a week of hockey camp. And then we just kind of forget all this stuff for the rest of the hockey season.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. Like logistically it's tough, but again, where I think we as the performance, the strength staff can make an impact is when we have our very first workout of the year, it's just a shadow of what a workout will look like in 6, 7, 8 weeks, right? Like first workout, hey guys, this is how we RDL. And then 7, 8 weeks later, it's you're going to do an RDL, then come over here, do a jump, then go do a push, then go do a pull. So for the hockey coaches, I was like, you could have your 3 areas of the ice, and they could all do the exact same drill. It's going to give them more reps. And then once they master that, put it down here in this zone. You don't even have to coach it. They know what they're doing. And then you could focus your attention on the shooting offensive zone here and the neutral zone and implement 2 more drills and 2 more skills. So yeah, we're really impactful, I think, if our coaches utilize our areas of expertise in that way.
I think it's funny with hockey how far it's come along, because the skill coaches and the skating coaches are, I'm not going to say they're like a new thing, but in popularity, it's a much bigger thing now. For a long time, it was just your hockey coach was your skill coach. He was your skating coach. And then goalie coaches became such a commonplace, and goalies were dominating. The NHL scoring went down, and all of a sudden the players got a little bit wiser, started getting better at skating, more skill, more speed. And now these, skill skating coaches are becoming way more common. Teams are utilizing them because, man, that's what the game is now. You got to do it. And then now scoring's caught back up again. But it was just that skill focus. Like that's what goalie coaches were. It was just totally skill focused. And now, like there's so many good skating coaches, so many good skill coaches. And if you watch an NHL game now, it's vastly different. The skating is so much better. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's something I've even noticed as, again, I'm just the dryland guy. I didn't grow up playing or watching hockey, but man, like if we really have a good emphasis on the skating and on the small skill components, it only enhances everything else. Just kind of going back a little bit, it was interesting. One of our presenters said it's kind of what you do without the puck now that separates you, because the levels of skating and skill are so high that the IQ, what you do without the puck, is kind of what gets people to the next level now versus years later. It was just if you're just the better skater or stick handler or shooter. And again, kind of relating it to us, if you don't have the puck, you have to be skating or moving fast. So there's another area that we could kind of impact when people don't have the ball. What are they doing off the ball or out of the play or kind of whatever? But some kind of, switching gears here, some other things I want to get to here is, we don't have to talk about this, but it's just a popular quote, and it was actually said twice on different days. Your team does not rise to the occasion, they fall to the training. And I think that was just another good example of you have to have good practices. A coach from the SHL, Cam Abbott, was basically like, practice these worst case scenarios in practice, right? Practice a guy breaking a stick. Practice the intensities or the pressure of you're down 1 and it's 6-on-5. Practice those you blow out a skate. What does that look like? And I think coaches could take that and run with it. So like in wrestling, practice when you're down by 1 and there's 20 seconds left, right? What's your go-to move? In basketball, practice an inbound where you're down by 4 and there's a minute left. I just thought that was good. And again, it was said twice, don't rise to the occasion, fall to the training. One of the last things I want to get into here, though, again, one of a phenomenal presenter here, the author John Bacon, wrote the book Let Them Lead, amongst a bunch of other books. This guy was like, yeah, I could just pick up the phone and call Herb Brooks if I needed to. And I was like, oh, okay, you're a big dog. I get that. But here's going to be my question for each of you. And Blair, just because you're in the middle here, I'll let you answer first. And then Ross, you can answer second. You can give a little background to it if you want. But this gentleman, John Bacon, asked, who was your favorite teacher? Right. So from school, who was your favorite teacher? All right. And then I'll kind of ask a follow-up to it. And it was interesting. Like, he asked that question, and at this conference, you could tell a lot of people were like nervous because it was like, again, like, oh man, there's that NHL coach, or, oh man, there's that, like, big time guy. Oh, that guy played over there, 10 years in the league. For me, I was like, I don't know who any of these guys are. So like, there was no pressure for me, right? I could be like in line next to somebody and have no idea, like, oh yeah, he has like 2 Stanley Cups. So yeah, we're in an auditorium. There's like 300 plus people, and he's like asking this question and no one's answering. And I'm just like, I got to do it. And so I just like yelled out like, Brian Brennan. And I was like, oh, I don't know any of these people. I don't care. So yeah, who was your favorite teacher? All right. So Blair, go ahead. Who was your, kindergarten through high school, even into college, whatever? Who was your favorite teacher?
I got a tie. So both PE teachers, of course. Yep. Go okay. Figure. Wayne Horrell was my grade 7-8 PE / history / I think you taught something else too. But just an awesome guy. He wore the same white t-shirts tucked into his track pants every day. And then once it was like, I don't know, like 75 or 20 in Celsius, something like that, shorts, same white t-shirt.
Sorry, Blair, who was the first teacher?
His name was Wayne Horrell. Okay. He was the man. And then in high school, I had the same PE teacher 3 out of 4 years. And it was Mr. McKeelson. I don't know. I can't remember his first name, but he was the best. Old school.
Awesome.
Legend. Yeah. But never forget those guys. And before I pass on the mic, I was thinking about something I don't want to forget. But the quote that you mentioned about not rising to the occasion,
fall to the
training. It reminds me of what we talked about the other week, where you mentioned that if you're training at 80% most of the time, and you are playing at 100%, you're going to run into trouble. But if you're training at 100%, and you've got to, play at 80%, you're going to have no trouble. So it's just the same idea, just a different way of saying it. And that's what I thought of when you said that.
Yeah, that's good. All right, Ross, favorite teacher?
Well, since you mentioned your favorite quotes here, from looking at your little sheet that you put together, I wrote it down. I wrote down a couple, but the make no small plans. They lack the power to inspire men. I'm ready to just run through a wall.
So good.
Just run through a wall right now. And that's
so good, right?
Yeah. And that's like, I got to remember. Yeah. I got to remember that one, things can't change as quickly as you'd like them to change sometimes. And I think that there are times, depending on the people that you're around, of that when you tell them your vision, you tell them what your plans are, they're like, that's too much. Like, it's too much. I don't want that responsibility.
Yeah.
I don't want to have that type of expectation. But anyway, that was a good quote. I had
that guy's on fire.
I had three. I've got three that are pretty tied.
Okay.
I got Mr. Kolzar, the man, the myth, the legend. He did our CAD drawing class in high school. I had him for 4 years. I had him every year because you had like a progression between your freshman to senior year, and you could only take his senior year class if you took his other three. And so by that time, it was only 8 to 10 guys that would be in that class. But it was he's a good man. And we would always go out and eat lunch in his classroom or just with him, and just talk and all that kind of good stuff. So that was always really cool and really special. And so I'll never forget it. We had like our awards ceremony at the end of the year for CAD drawing, like in front of the school. And my man teared up giving us awards. And I was like, okay, this is it.
No way.
This is it. And so, Mr. Kolzar. Awesome. And then I had two. I had Miss Day, who is now married, and I cannot think of what her name is now. And then there's Miss Raglan. One was the freshman. She was a freshman English teacher, and the other one was a math teacher. Mostly just because they were super supportive. They weren't, and I can relate to this as being a teacher now and working in a school environment. And the same really went for Kolzar. They're not automatically getting irritated or snapping on kids based off of behavioral things. Being super patient and having conversations and not just automatically trying to send a kid to an office for different things and having those conversations. And I think that goes a really long ways with any kid. Whereas if the first time that they're in trouble or they do something, that wasn't the best decision, you're automatically just trying to get them in trouble or write them up or whatever, your relationship is shot because there's nothing there to respect in terms of when you do make that decision and whatnot. But yeah, those would be my three.
Awesome. Good. So hopefully this doesn't backfire on me because it worked really well. So John Bacon asks, who's your favorite teacher? I yell out, Brian Brennan. And then he just like dials in on me. They had lights on, so he couldn't see, but he's staring me down, even though he can't see my face. And then he asks, was he easy? And
Nope.
No, Mr. Brennan was tough. He kept people accountable. He demanded excellence on his tests. He did not grade easy. His classroom was fun. It was exciting, but you had to learn in Mr. Brennan's class. So Blair, of your two, were they easy or did they push you?
Never. They both pushed, and they're always
right.
While pushing, still also, treating you in a way that made you want to give your best effort for them.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't well like said. Cracking a whip and telling you do your work. It was, hey, like, this is what you have to do. This is how long you have to do it. If you need help, I'll help you. But you can do it. Yeah.
What about you, Ross?
Nope.
Were any of those three teachers easy? Yeah.
No. That like Blair just said. I mean, you've got high expectations, and this is what you got to do, and it's kind of that simple to help you along the way. But standard is the standard.
Yeah. I thought that was just so profound, right? Your favorite teacher, I wrote it in capital and underlined it. Your favorite teacher was never easy. And he was just speaking along the lines of, at your funeral, people will talk about your values, what you stood for, and who you helped. And yeah, just as a coach, it's very, very fun to be the fun, happy, guy, but people want an inspired leader. People want somebody to hold them accountable, to go to battle with them. And your favorite teacher, your favorite coach was never easy. They always, as you said, Ross, the standard was the standard. They expected excellence. They pushed you. So yeah, that was a great one for me. And I wrote down some of my best coaches that I've had and that I've worked with, and they all had that same thing. They were not easy. Really interesting, I thought. With that, guys, I could talk for hours about all my notes here. Just looking at the Google Doc we have shared here, I only wrote about 4 coaches worth of notes, and that was only page 3 or 4 of 12. But I think that's a great place to kind of end here with kind of my big takeaways, at least that would relate to us and sports performance. I could tell you great systems for 2-on-2 and how to create time and space, but I don't think that'll be too good for the listeners or anything. So do you each want to kind of either comment on the your favorite teacher was never easy, or just kind of a takeaway for you, and we kind of wrap this thing up?
Yeah, I'll just say those 2 teachers were, unless somebody brings up somebody else, those are the only 2 teachers that I think of regularly, wonder what they're doing right now, kind of thing. And that I would want to reach out and talk to. Yeah. I think they left that kind of impact.
That's awesome.
Obviously kind of left a little legacy as well. And, some good memories, some good stories too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And Chris, I would say just as far as your hockey conference, and just a couple thoughts there of it's pretty important for us as strength coaches to not necessarily watch film, but at least know what the game is and know what people's strategies are, and talk a lingo, and being able to talk to coaches. And I mean, I think that was something with at Liberty and working with Coach Castro that I know that he at least liked, where you are literally talking the same language and being able to kind of apply it accordingly. That's always a good thing when you can talk that language to a coach and talk it to a player and make it make sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's awesome. Well, fellas, it's amazing how you could just learn anything from high performers, right? We just talked for an hour, 15 minutes about a bunch of hockey coaches getting together and speaking about hockey. But I think that's a good life lesson of, no matter the subject, we could always learn from just high performers and people who want to better themselves and better other people around them. And I guess the closing thought is your favorite teacher was never easy. So hold people accountable and set standards and expectations, provide feedback, and that's going to create a winning culture in the weight room and hopefully for the team.
Awesome.
All right, fellas. Good stuff tonight.
Thanks, Chris.